I used to think heartbreak came with screaming, with slamming doors, with accusations hurled like glass, loud, chaotic, and violent. But the real heartbreak? It's quiet. It sits beside you in courtrooms, while your ex-husband smiles politely at the judge and says, "Your Honor, I'm concerned for her mental stability." He says it gently as if he's not driving a dagger straight through my spine. I sat there in a gray dress, palms clenched on my lap while Ryan painted me as a danger to my own son. He didn't scream. He didn't snarl. He didn't need to. He used phrases like emotionally erratic, prone to outbursts concerning behavior patterns. Phrases so clean they could have been lifted from a psychology textbook. He'd rehearsed this. And the worst part, the judge listened, not in disbelief, but with furrowed brows and notes scribbled on a yellow legal pad, as if he were considering it, as if the man who once forgot our son's 5th birthday, but remembered to bring his mistress to Aruba, could possibly be more stable than me. I was losing my son, one Your Honor at a time. The courtroom lights buzzed softly above, cold and clinical, the kind that made your skin feel like parchment. Ryan sat straight in his seat, not a hair out of place, dressed like a man auditioning for sainthood navy suit. Subtle tie, the wedding ring long gone, but the performance impeccable. His lawyer, a sharp woman with red lipstick and colder eyes, leaned into her role like it was theater. They didn't say I was unfit outright. No, that would be too crude. They did worse, they implied. They implied that my tears during custody mediation were disruptive, that the postpartum depression I fought through alone was untreated, that my texts at midnight begging Ryan to please bring Aiden home were erratic. They implied until implication became assumption, and assumption began to sound like proof. The worst moment, when the judge looked at me gently and asked, "Mrs. Carter, have you considered counseling?" As if I was broken, as if I was the one manipulating the system, as if I hadn't already spent every ounce of strength trying to stay sane while raising a child alone under the shadow of a man who was always watching, always twisting my every move. My lawyer nudged my elbow. "You're shaking," she whispered. "Of course I was." You try sitting in a room where your former husband, your child's father, is methodically removing every trace of your credibility like he's erasing pencil marks on a page. You try being called unstable by the man who once smashed a wine glass 2 inches from your cheekbone because dinner was cold. But of course, there were no witnesses then. Just me. Him and silence. Silence that now followed me into this courtroom. There's a unique cruelty in watching someone weaponize the things you once confessed in love. I remember telling Ryan one late night during Aiden's infancy, "Sometimes I'm scared I'm not good at this, like I'm messing him up." He'd pulled me close, kissed my forehead, and said, "You're doing great, babe. You're the best mom." Now that same confession was being read aloud in court, pulled from an old email I once wrote when I was sleep-deprived and scared. Ryan had submitted it as evidence of mental fragility. The words I whispered in vulnerability had been loaded into a chamber and fired back at me with precision. I stopped breathing for a moment, not because I was shocked, no, I'd learned by now what Ryan was capable of. I stopped breathing because I looked over and saw Aiden, our son, 10 years old, small frame in a too big blazer, hands clenched in his lap like mine, his eyes darting between the judge, his father, and me. And I saw the flicker of doubt. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the room. He saw who they were painting me to be, and he was starting to wonder if it was true. That broke me. Not Ryan's lies, not the judge's suspicion, not the cold smiles of a legal system that didn't know me. What broke me was the look in my son's eyes. The question, is mommy really crazy? No mother should ever see that look. I wanted to scream, to throw every moment of love, every scraped knee I'd kissed every night I'd sat beside him during asthma attacks into that courtroom like a flood. But I didn't, because in court emotion becomes ammunition. If you cry, you're unstable. If you speak too much, you're manic. If you sit too quietly, you're disassociated. So I did what women like me are taught to do. I swallowed the scream, bit my tongue, and stared straight ahead. Let them lie. Let them build their castle of fiction, because even then, something inside me whispered, the truth is coming. After the hearing adjourned for the day, I walked past Ryan. He smiled, that smug, satisfied smirk that said, "I've already won." But I didn't look at him. I looked at Aiden. And when our eyes met just for a second, he mouthed one word, "Sorry." I didn't know why. I wouldn't know for weeks. But in that moment, I just nodded, held his gaze, and thought, "You don't have to fix this, baby. Just remember, just hold the truth. That's all I need." I thought the worst thing that could happen was being called crazy in court. I was wrong. The worst part came after, when even the people who once swore they believed in you Start looking at you like maybe, just maybe he's right. I remember sitting in the hallway outside the courtroom, cold bench, pale walls. My lawyer on the phone whispering into the receiver like I was radioactive, and across from me, Ryan and his lawyer laughing quietly over something on her phone, as if we weren't fighting over the soul of a little boy. That's when my sister walked in. Madeline, high heels clicking on the tile, eyes wide with pity, and a subtle shake of the head I'd come to dread. She sat beside me too close, like she was comforting a patient, not a sister, a patient. "You have to stop crying in there," she said, voice low. "I'm not crying," I whispered. "You were shaking, you looked off, that word off, so vague, so damning. It stuck to me like a disease I didn't remember catching." Madeline used to hold my hair while I vomited from morning sickness. She helped me paint Aiden's nursery. But now she asked if maybe I should consider stepping back from the custody fight. "Just until things cool down," she added. "You don't want to make it worse. Make it worse." He was already trying to erase me, one lie at a time, and somehow I was the one making it worse. I nodded politely, like a good woman does when her world is collapsing and everyone around her hands her the hammer. I didn't go home that night, not really. I went to the place I was renting, one bedroom, no photos, half unpacked boxes, the kind of place that doesn't feel lived in, just survived in. I dropped my keys on the counter and stood there in the dark. No one called. Not my mother, not Madeline, not even my lawyer. I was radioactive now, untouchable, the woman spiraling, the woman too emotional, the woman who maybe needs help. The thing they don't tell you about being gaslit on a systemic level is that it doesn't feel like fire. It feels like fog. You doubt your memory, you replay conversations, you read your own text messages 5, 6, 7 times, just to make sure you don't sound crazy. I started checking my locks twice before bed, rereading court documents until the letters blurred. There were nights I'd sit on the floor with the lamp off just to remember how silence sounded before the war began. Ryan didn't have to destroy me all at once. He just needed to convince the world I was slowly destroying myself. And it was working. My lawyer Jenna called 2 days later. Her tone was clipped, polite, professional. She'd been my friend once we'd gone to the same college, but now she spoke to me like a client with a messy folder. "Rebecca," she began, "I want to be honest with you. Right now it's not looking good." I waited. "The court-appointed therapist is leaning toward awarding primary custody to Ryan. They believe Aiden needs a more stable environment." I felt my stomach cave in. Jenna kept talking. "There's also mention of, well, your messages." The tone, the timing. "It paints a picture." I wanted to scream. What picture? That I cared too much. That I wanted my son safe. That I was God. Forbid emotional. Instead, I asked quietly, "Do you believe them?" There was a pause. Long. "And then I believe you love your son." It wasn't a yes, it was the sentence people use before they lock the cage. For the first time I considered giving up, not because I didn't love Aiden, but because I loved him enough not to drag him through the fire they'd built around me. I pictured him in Ryan's house, quiet, obedient, suffocating in perfection. But safe. And then I pictured something else, the way he hugged me the last time we were alone. How he slipped a piece of paper into my coat pocket and whispered, "Don't read it until later." I'd forgotten about it in the chaos. I tore through the closet, digging into that same coat. And there it was, folded like a secret. A single line in his messy 4th-grade handwriting. "I don't believe what Dad says. I remember everything. I'll help you." My knees buckled. Not because it solved anything, but because he remembered. He saw me, and in a world where no one else did, that was everything. The next day I stood outside his school. Technically, I wasn't allowed unsupervised visits, but I wasn't breaking rules. I just wanted to see his face. To remind myself this war wasn't in vain. He walked out, backpack slung low, hair messy as ever. My heart ached. When our eyes met, he smiled. Small, secretive. Then he reached into his backpack and tugged at something wrapped in cloth. He mouthed a word, one word, proof. We weren't allowed to speak, but that moment it said everything. Aiden wasn't afraid, he wasn't confused, he wasn't siding with the man who tried to turn him into a prop. He was watching, recording. And in his small, silent way, he was fighting back. From that day forward, I stopped crying in court, not because I wasn't broken, but because I realized they could take my reputation, my family, my name, but they couldn't take my son's truth. And that was going to be the weapon that ended all of this. There's a difference between losing custody and being erased. I didn't understand that difference until the first envelope arrived, crisp, white, and brutal in its politeness. Notice of supervised contact suspension. No greeting, no explanation, just cold ink and colder decisions. I had been officially removed from Aiden's life pending further court review. just like that. No warning, no voice, no chance to say goodbye. The world didn't end with a bang, it ended with legalese. Ryan had submitted a new motion, claims of emotional instability, potential coercion, and detrimental influence on the child's perception of safety. A masterclass in projection, and the judge. He approved a temporary suspension to protect the emotional environment of the minor. Protect, funny word that one. They said they were protecting Aiden by cutting him off from his mother from me. I sat in my apartment that night staring at a blank phone screen. I'd reread every message Aiden ever sent me, every blurry selfie, every voice note. The last one was dated 2 weeks before the hearing. Can I bring the old Lego box next time, Mommy? The one we used to build the ship with. Now the number had gone dead. Disconnected, blocked, erased. Ryan wasn't trying to win. He was trying to rewrite the script. He wanted to raise a son who never remembered the sound of my lullabies, never recalled the smell of pancakes on Saturday morning, never whispered, "I miss you," when his nightlight flickered. He didn't just want custody, he wanted silence. And silence is a dangerous thing. It makes you question your own name. You start asking yourself, was I really that bad? Did I push too hard, love too loudly, fight too long? Even the mirror hesitates before agreeing with you. That week, I received another blow. A new statement from the court-appointed child therapist, someone I had only met twice. They said Aiden was relieved to have space, that he expressed confusion when asked about my behavior, that he seemed calmer in his father's care. They said my presence might further destabilize his emotional growth. I laughed when I read that. It wasn't a joyful laugh. It was the kind of laugh that comes from somewhere deep raw, cracked on the edge of something dangerous, because I knew what was happening. Ryan was using the one weapon I could never fight: my son's silence. But I also knew Aiden. I knew his silences weren't empty, they were loud with meaning. He didn't speak because he was scared, not of me, of the people listening. 3 days later, Jenna, my lawyer, called again. There's a final hearing set, 2 weeks. My throat dried. That soon Ryan's lawyer is pushing hard. They want permanent custodial status, full legal rights, no visitation. The final nail. But she hesitated. There's something odd. What? Jenna paused. We received a package, no return label, no postmark, just a flash drive and a single sticky note. What did the note say? She exhaled for the judge. Play this when it matters. My pulse stopped, I whispered. Did you watch it? She hesitated. Yes. And Rebecca. Whatever happens next, this changes everything. I didn't sleep that night. My body was still, but my mind screamed, what had Aiden done? What had he risked? Where had he hidden a flash drive in a home guarded by cameras and lies? And why now? The only answer I could come up with was this. He saw the end coming, and he wasn't ready to forget me. But Ryan was, he was so ready. He submitted photos to the court. Aiden smiling at baseball practice, Aiden with his dog, Aiden blowing out birthday candles. I wasn't in any of them. I'd been edited out, even from the memories I helped create. There was a particularly cruel one. Aiden's 7th birthday, the banner, the cake, the guests. But not me. They had literally cropped me out. I'd made the cake. I'd baked the damn thing at 3 a.m. with frosting that melted halfway up the side. Aiden had told me it was perfect, like a spaceship crash. Now I wasn't even in the picture. That's when I realized Ryan wasn't just gaslighting me, he was gaslighting our son. If you repeat a lie long enough, children stop remembering what was true. But Aiden, he remembered enough to fight. The final week before court was a blur. No communication, no updates, just silence. But I felt it building like a storm that hadn't struck yet, dark, heavy, and inevitable. And in that silence, I prepared myself for the only thing I still had. The truth. I ironed my court dress the night before the hearing, the same gray one from the first session. Fitting, I thought, a uniform for war. I stood in the mirror staring at the woman they said was unstable. She didn't look unstable. She looked like a woman who'd been pushed past every breaking point and still chose to stand, still chose to show up, still chose to hope. In the courtroom the next morning, I didn't look for Ryan. I didn't scan for pity in the judge's eyes or approval in my sister's. I looked for Aiden. And when they brought him in, small shoulders, solemn face, backpack on his lap, I didn't wave, I just locked eyes with him, and he gave me the faintest nod, not of fear, not of confusion, of purpose. That's when I knew something was coming, something big. And this time, it was his move. There's a silence that breaks you, and then there's a silence that saves you. That morning in court, I sat on the edge of the wooden bench, palms flat against my knees like I was trying to hold myself down to keep from flying apart. Ryan looked victorious, relaxed. The way people look when they're about to win something they think they deserve. His lawyer, of course, wore her signature crimson lipstick war paint if I ever saw it and walked like the verdict was already in her heels. Even the judge looked tired, like he'd already made peace with the paperwork. It was all just formalities now. The room smelled like coffee and varnished wood and something else. I couldn't quite name something like ending. They began with Ryan. He spoke with calm authority, as if this were just a business deal, not the slow erasure of a mother from her child's life. Your Honor, he said, my only concern has ever been Aiden's well-being. I believe his recent improvements, his stability, his emotional clarity all speak for themselves. He spoke as though he were doing everyone a favor by keeping me away. Then came the therapist's statement, again sanitized, clinical, and terrifying. Aiden exhibits signs of improved emotional regulation in the absence of maternal influence, as if I were a virus, not a mother, not a person. And then came my turn. I didn't cry. I didn't plead. I simply stood, took a breath, and said, I love my son. I have never stopped loving him. And if silence is the only way I'm allowed to protect him now, then I'll use it. Then I sat down. My lawyer didn't add a word, because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is enough. And that should have been the end. The judge shuffled papers. Ryan leaned back. I felt my lungs start to collapse under the weight of what was about to be stolen from me forever. Then, the bailiff's voice interrupted. Your Honor, the child has requested to speak. The room shifted. The judge blinked. Aiden. Everyone turned. My son, small and still in his seat, lifted a single hand. The movement wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, intentional. The judge hesitated. He's not required to, but Aiden was already standing. He walked forward with the kind of bravery that doesn't come from age, but from purpose. In his hands was a small object, a flash drive wrapped in the cloth from his lunchbox, like it was something sacred. He looked up at the judge. His voice didn't tremble. I'd like you to watch this. No one moved. Ryan's lawyer stood. Objection. This was not pre-submitted. The judge raised a hand. Let the boy speak. Aiden walked over to Jenna, my lawyer, and placed the flash drive in her hand. Then he returned to his seat. Not a word more, just silence, but oh God, the weight of that silence. The judge looked at the clerk. Play the file. The courtroom screen came alive and everything changed. It was shaky at first, handheld blurry. Aiden must have hidden the phone in his room. The image sharpened Ryan's voice, loud sharp, not like the courtroom version. This one was venom. If you ever talk about your mother again like that, if you ever tell anyone what I said, I'll take your tablet, your games, everything. Do you understand me? Aiden's small voice. But you said she didn't hurt anyone. I said shut up. Aiden flinched in the video, covered his ears. My entire body tensed, the courtroom frozen. Next clip, Ryan pacing in the living room. You want to end up like her? Hysterical, alone. She's not coming back. She's not good for you. I'm what's best for you. You could hear Aiden breathing hard behind the camera. And then the final clip. This one shattered me. Ryan holding a court document, standing in front of Aiden. I'm going to fix your life. You'll thank me when you're older. She'll disappear, and you'll forget. Then the worst thing of all, he looked into the camera and said, the trick to making a lie stick is saying it enough times that even you start to believe it. The screen went black, silence, not a breath, not a cough, not even the judge moved. Then, slowly, the judge turned to Ryan and asked softly, Is this your voice? Mr. Carter? Ryan's face, so smug a moment ago, cracked. He stammered. That video is taken out of context. This is illegal surveillance. The judge raised a single hand, then looked at the court reporter. Strike the last motion. All previous claims by Mr. Carter regarding the mother's instability are hereby suspended pending full review of this evidence. And finally, he turned to me. For the first time, his eyes weren't tired. They were wide. Miss Carter, it appears you were not only stable, you were silenced. I didn't cry. Not in that moment. I looked at Aiden, and he looked at me. Two people in a courtroom full of adults who tried to write our story for us. But we had the final word, and we hadn't even spoken. There are moments that fracture time before the video, after the video. That line will stay with me for the rest of my life. Because in less than 5 minutes, everything Ryan spent years fabricating, the lies, the manipulation, the carefully crafted narrative of my instability collapsed under the weight of a shaky, grainy truth, filmed by a boy no one thought had a voice, but he did. And he used it in the one way Ryan never could without saying a single word. The courtroom adjourned in stunned silence. Ryan's lawyer requested a recess. The judge refused. Instead, he ordered an emergency custody review. I sat there, my heart a battlefield between adrenaline and disbelief as my lawyer whispered, "They're going to reverse it." He played himself right into termination. I didn't smile, not yet. Because after months of fighting, after nights curled in corners too numb to scream after being labeled unfit in every way imaginable, I'd learned to hold hope carefully, like glass. But then, I looked at Aiden, and in his eyes I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. Not fear, not confusion, relief. 2 days later, we were back in court. This time Ryan wasn't confident, his suit wasn't pressed, his eyes were bloodshot. His lawyer spoke quickly, trying to mitigate damage, questioning the video's legality, accusing me of coercing our son, but the judge was having none of it. He ruled swiftly. Ryan's visitation would be supervised pending a full investigation, but the bigger blow, full custody, was granted to me. Effective immediately, Aiden would be coming home. When the gavel hit the wood, I didn't move, I couldn't. Not out of shock, but because every cell in my body was trying to believe this moment was real. Jenna squeezed my hand. "You did it," she whispered, but I shook my head. "No, he did." Outside the courthouse, the air felt different, lighter, real, like oxygen that hadn't passed through a courtroom filter. And then he ran to me. Aiden, no cameras, no judgment, no lawyers, just a boy throwing himself into his mother's arms like he'd been holding back the hug for years. "I missed you," he mumbled into my shoulder. And I, who had spent so long trying to stay composed, finally let go. Tears, laughter, everything at once. That night we sat on the couch together. No TV, no noise, just the sound of his breathing against mine. He looked up at me, voice barely audible. I didn't know if it would work. I was scared. I brushed his hair back. "You were brave." He paused. Daddy said, "If I told he'd make sure you disappeared," I stiffened. But Aiden added quickly, "But I remembered what you always said. That silence doesn't protect the truth, it only buries it." I didn't remember saying that. But maybe I did, or maybe he just heard it anyway. The next few weeks weren't perfect. There were home visits from social services, counseling check-ins. But this time I welcomed them because I had nothing to hide. No lies to stitch together, just truth, raw, imperfect, and healing. Ryan tried to appeal. Of course he did. He blamed stress, miscommunication, frustration. He begged the court for a second chance to parent properly, but the evidence was too loud, too damning, too honest. Eventually, he faded from the proceedings like an actor whose spotlight burned out. Months later, Aiden asked me, "Do you think he ever loved me?" I didn't lie. I said, "I think he loved the idea of control more than he understood love itself." And Aiden, my fierce, quiet, brilliant boy, nodded slowly. "I don't want to hate him. I just don't want to forget who I am." And that's when I knew. My son wasn't broken. He was becoming. We built something new. A home not made of fear or whispering walls, but of open doors and open conversations. We celebrated birthdays with frosting on our noses and music too loud. We planted a tree in the backyard, a cherry blossom because Aiden said he wanted something that would grow without being told how. And every spring when it blooms, I remember that day in court not as the day I won, but as the day we reclaimed our story. Because sometimes justice doesn't roar. Sometimes it whispers, it plays a video, it silences a room, and then it lets a mother hold her child without fear again.